Today, we as a country argue about everything. Some are so confused they can't determine the difference between a girl and a boy. I propose that this argument is by design and less about gender, and more about division. Real change will not come from convincing others on the internet a boy has a penis, and girls have vaginas. For one, changing someone's mind never happens through text messaging, and assuming you were successful in winning that internet battle, the war is raging on unimpeded. And finally, the argument is disingenuous. It's an argument for the sake of arguing. I'd go as far to say that to engage in foolishness, is to lose. So, what is needed for real change? I thought it over quite thoroughly and the answer is not 42. Well, not this time anyway. Our government continues to increase in power. As their power increases, they have grown in contempt of the Constitution. I assume this is because the Constitution is the document that limits their power and is preventing them from becoming the tyrants that we know they would grow to become. With exception of George Washington, humans typically don't possess the humility and wisdom to not take power if offered. As they grow in power, and we move more and more socialist, our government increasingly has a gross inability to represent the American people on any grounds. So, this leads me to my problem statement. My problem statement is, the citizens of the country are not being represented by their elected officials. What could be adopted, changed, or enacted that would modify their behavior? The solution must remain within the founding documents and can't be solved by sending the corrupt home. We can assume their replacements would become corrupt over time as well. The lack of ethics and the culture within the system need to be improved for long-term success. What, if modified, could make significant change across government and result in the citizens once again being represented? The following videos will discuss the changes I believe would get us, the American people, representation from our representatives. In addition, I limited the number of changes to 3. This forces meaningful consideration for the changes selected. Are they the best ideas? I don't know. I will propose them and encourage meaningful discussion in the comments. If you have your own 3 ideas or maybe you just support the Constitution, select the like button. So here we go with the 3 changes I'd recommend for regaining representation from our elected officials. Number 1. Term limits for the House and the Senate. We see today that lifetime appointed representation is not working. The longer in office the more cynical and corrupt they become. In addition, the party's control over our representatives is tremendous. This becomes obvious when each party votes down party lines, or when they all have the exact same talking points, and they use the exact same words to describe a situation as mandated per the party script. The script is even parroted by the President of the United States. It goes as far as the media, who are supposed to be independent of the party but seem to manage to mouth the words to the script. This level of power is dangerous to our republic. Because your representatives are controlled, they are taking orders from the party and special interests. What they are not doing, is what they get elected to do. Represent their constituents. Term limits would be a move in the right direction. With each candidate knowing they have limited time in office, the party will have limited control over them. They will not be as prone to being cynical, won't require endorsement after being elected, party funding becomes less critical to a lame duck, and the elected can focus on supporting the Constitution and constituents. Good ideas versus political pressure might rule the day and allow good choices for the country. Another area I didn't mention was that term limits would prevent long-term crime families from running our government. The solution will not solve corruption, but it limits the power of the corrupt, and empower those who want to do what's right. Because we can safely assume our officials won't do the right thing based on the will of the people, we will need a long-term approach. The long-term approach resolves this through attrition. That means the existing swamp people get a pass and can stay in office as long as they are elected. At the same time, newly elected representatives would be subject to the term limits. Let's drain the swamp through term limits. It's good for the people, and it's good for the country. Number 2, stop the legalized corruption of our representatives. That statement might surprise you. Legal corruption is also more commonly referred to as lobbying. The elites, if they can afford it, hire lobbyists to pay our elected officials to pass or kill laws. This is done through many avenues, like donations to their campaigns, jobs for the elected official, jobs for family members, speaking engagements, and the list of shady deals go on. An example of this on the front stage is Joe Biden's son, Hunter. Hunter is not unique in this way. He is just extremely reckless and for some reason has zero fucks given for repercussions to his actions. Hunter was bold enough to videotape his indiscretions for the world to see. This goes beyond normal legal corruption, and transitions to a level of depravity most Americans could not imagine partaking in, But that is another video, and if it's about Hunter it will be X-rated. When an elected official is compromised or paid for by a lobby, they will write laws in support of their donors. If the donor is motivated they might even write the law for the compromised representative. Isn't that sweet of them? It is a disgusting break of our system that needs to come to an end. There is a great video called "Corruption is Legal in America" and worth the 5 minutes view on YouTube. Princeton performed a study to evaluate the level of representation the citizens of our country are receiving. The study came to an amazing conclusion. Per the video and the Princeton study, quote, "The preferences of the average American appear to have a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy." End quote. Let me say that again, the preferences of the average American appear to have a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. The corporations and the elite are represented and you are not. The lobby can create or shut down laws based on their personal and corporate best interests. If a law passes you agree with it, it's just lucky. Literally, if a law was to be passed that all Americans supported. Let's call it the Save the Puppies in the Well Fund. Who would not want to support saving puppies? Well, all of America could support this, but the reality is, if an elite with a lobby decided they didn't want that passed, despite the unanimous support from Americans, the puppies would die. Next, apply propaganda to divide Americans on the laws and muddy the waters. We will be told puppies don't need saving because they bite, produce carbon gases, are a threat to our democracy, are pets of insurrectionists, cause crime to go up, or could lead to a nuclear war. Add any ridiculous spin that makes you afraid and reactive. If you want to save the puppies in the well, we need to make corruption, lobbying, illegal, and on top of that all politicians must make their financial transactions open record. Politicians need to be held to a higher standard because they have more opportunities for corruption. The shadow of corruption should not be allowed. Someone smarter than me would need to frame the law, but lobbying would need to be made illegal and it needs to account for the families of the elected official. Change number 2 is to end lobbying. Ending lobbying is good for the people and good for the country. Number 3, remove the activity of buying and selling of votes in exchange for gifts or services that should be out of scope for the federal government. A weakness of a democratic republic is when the politicians start to buy votes or often make promises with the purpose of buying your vote. A great example of this is the promise of paying off student debt with money collected from other citizens. Making this promise is clearly intended to motivate college students to vote for the handouts. It is purchasing of their vote in the absence of the people that provided the funds being discussed. Not to mention, the government is the root cause of the increase in college debt and inflated costs. Thanks to their loan guarantee programs. Government makes problems, they don't solve them. Some might also say this supports those who are already expected to benefit from their education and is a form of reparations for the middle class. The other side of this coin is the ability to vote for free stuff. Free stuff is good in many cases and some social programs are good for society. The issue arises when the people receiving the free stuff outnumber the people paying for the free stuff. It becomes a dangerous situation when the consumers are represented in greater numbers than the producers. An example of this is the state of California, where they have the highest taxes to pay for a failing system. To help prevent the purchasing of votes or people voting in free stuff at the federal level, we would need to make it illegal or undesirable for government to make these promises. One method would be to add voting eligibility requirements. These would include proof of citizenship, proof of contributor status, in the form of proof of taxes paid, and the forfeit of voting eligibility while you are accepting government-funded support. At least until the person is back on their feet and paying taxes into the social funds. Those contributing to the greater good of our society, which is funded by their taxes, should be given a voice as to how that money will be distributed or not distributed. People not contributing should not get a voice in how someone else's money is spent. A secondary solution would be to remove the federal government from acting like a charity altogether. Charity could be managed locally and at a state level. This would be a tough sell, but maybe with the previous changes, it could be possible. The more people living off the government, the more powerful the government becomes, and the lower our standard of living drops. It also means the government becomes less accountable to the people powering America. Social programs would still exist, but the people paying for the programs would have more interest in their success or failures. Actively making a voter bloc using taxpayer funds to purchase votes is unethical. As a country, we should prevent government officials from manipulating citizens, especially when they are using money provided by the citizens, as a carrot they are personally giving away. Buying and selling votes needs to become illegal. It's an unethical practice, and having it end is good for the people and good for the country. In conclusion, I don't believe that these are the only solutions, but I do believe they cut to the core of the issue. The core of the issue is that we the people need to be represented by elected officials, and today we are not. Everything else we fight about is the noise that keeps us as a whole from attacking the real problems we face. Inflation, gas prices, printing money to support wars in other countries, closing industry in our country in the name of greenness, only to have another nation reap the benefits, and investment terrorists like Soros intentionally dividing Americans to support a globalist government. These are not actions of fools but of people that represent themselves, or are compromised due to their indiscretions. If we had a voice, and our representation enacted in the best interest of the people, these challenges will be crushed by those who are in place to protect our liberty and Constitution. Instead, they are entertained and tolerated. People are frustrated. Some turn to a larger government for a solution, and that is socialism, and others turn to someone that might wake up the DC elite, like the DC wrecking ball, Donald J. Trump. Both are disruptors of the system, and represent a desire for change. Socialism, however, is more of the same but with zero fucks given to the people and a murderous contempt for the opposition. So don't be stupid and fall for that baloney. What we need is representation. We can get that through 1. Term limits, 2. End lobbying, and 3. End the buying of votes with tax dollars. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to donate to uspatriotaction.com. Post comments below. I'd like to hear your opinions.